All right, welcome to episode 13 of Bloggers Are Weird. I am your host, DJ Paris, from the blog thoughtsfromparis.com. It's not about France. No one wants to read about France. Well, if you're going on a trip there, I guess you get the Photo's Guide or the, I don't know, what's the other one? Living Planet? Lonely Planet? Lonely Planet? I'm lonely. Let's talk about dating since I'm lonely. That's a good one. Good segue, Deej. I called myself Deej. That's terrible. All right, anyway, I don't call myself that. You guys can call me that. I have people that do, and they ask me, is that okay? And I say, yeah, I don't care. I got bigger problems than that. So let's talk about dating. So my father, my father calls me up this morning, and I am in no way exaggerating or shitting you in this particular story. My dad calls me up, he leaves a voicemail this morning, and he goes, your mother and I have been watching the Bible miniseries, which, by the way, my parents are not particularly religious, but we've been watching this, and I know you've been doing a lot of online dating. We were curious if you are participating in the website christiansingles.com, or maybe it was Christian Mingles, anyway, one of the two. And he leaves this on my voicemail, but I didn't finish what he said because I interrupted myself. He said, because I wonder if it's a good place to pick up chicks. That's the message he left. Would Christian Singles be a great place to pick up chicks? I haven't yet called him back to tell him I am neither on JDate nor christiansingles.com, but I appreciate his interest in my love life. And I just came off a marathon dating session myself, and again, not an exaggeration, but 7 dates in 7 days, no repeats. So I have been just going crazy on these dates, and I am broke. I've been taking all these birds to dinner, and no one's getting the salad. I thought that was the thing, is everybody's supposed to get the salad because they don't want to seem like they eat a lot. You know, I'll just have water with a little bit of lemon, you know, and maybe the salad. No one got the fucking salad. Everyone's getting the lobster thermidor and the Chateaubriand, and no one's getting that either. Everyone was very sweet, but I also don't date weirdos for some reason. I always just wanted one weirdo so I could have a great story to write on my blog. And everyone asks, are you going to write about me? Please don't write about me. And I always say, no, I'm not going to write about you. But secretly, I would have written about them if they were crazy. But no one's crazy. Everyone's so normal. So I'm a little disappointed with that. But I am exhausted. I'm broke. And I am not going out on any dates for a long time, at least a week, because I got nothing left. The tank is on empty. So today, what do we got today? Speaking of, we weren't speaking of anything, but we'll segue from my dates to the show today. We've got Eric Deckers. Who is Eric Deckers? You might not be familiar with him, but you should. He is a huge name in the blogging community. He's an author. He's written one of my favorite books, No Bullshit, Social Media, and with Jason Falls, another one of the big names out there. He's written 2 or 3 other books. He has been blogging for 18 years as a humor blogger. He's published in, I think, 10 magazines 10 newspapers every single week, and then also a daily newspaper. So he's a big deal, and he's funny, and he's smart, and he's going to tell you what you should be doing from a social media perspective to help build your blog. So if you're curious, if you're new. And one other thing. I confess for the first time ever my social media strategy. How do I get to 50,000 Twitter followers? Well, I do something sort of shameful, quite frankly. And it's a little bit embarrassing, and you're going to hate me for it. But you know what? It was time to reveal it. It's pretty bad. I talk about it on the show. I get Eric's take on it. And I was afraid that he was going to hang up the phone on me. But so thankfully he didn't. And he actually said it was not a terrible idea. But anyway, so go grab a tumbler of the sour grape puckers, which you know you got. You got it in the back of the liquor cabinet, or whatever your drug of choice is. Mine is a mixture. I take 2 bags of Sun Chips. One is Harvest Cheddar, the other is French Onion. I mix them together. Not in the bag because that would be inappropriate, but in a bowl. So that's my drug of choice. But I screwed up my outro there. But the bottom line is get something that makes you feel good. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Today's podcast is sponsored by romance-text.com. Looking to reignite the passion in your relationship? You have to check out romance-text.com. This is how to use text messages to bring back the passion and reignite the spark you once had. Now, if you're thinking this sounds cheesy, or maybe it's just learning how to send dirty text messages, it's actually not. This program by relationship expert Michael Fiore has been featured in over 200 television and radio shows. This program has a money-back guarantee, is normally $97, but listeners of Bloggers Are Weird get a special price of only $47 for the entire program. By purchasing the program, you help support this show. Visit romance-text.com and get the passion back. So, tell me, how did you get into humor writing?
I actually started writing a complaint letter to Fresh Air with Terry Gross.
Sure.
But I liked the show, and I didn't want to come across as an asshole. And so I would punctuate whatever strong statement I'm trying to make, I'd punctuate it with a joke to lighten the mood. And when I was done with this 800-word angry letter, it was more funny than angry. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting how I did that. I wonder if I could do that with something else. And so I ended up writing 2 more essays, and I showed them to my wife, and she liked them. And so I thought, well, I wonder if there's a future for this. And I approached publisher and editor of a small weekly paper up in north central Indiana, and I had met him at my county's Democratic Party meeting. And when I talked to him a month later and gave him my samples, he said, well, are you a Democrat? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, welcome aboard. And so I got to be a humor columnist for the Wakarusa Tribune and Mishawaka Enterprise. And then I just started kind of writing from there, and eventually expanded that to 10 newspapers around Indiana, all weeklies plus 1 daily. And I've been doing that, I think, since, what would that be, 1994, wow. 95, somewhere around there. Have never missed a deadline.
Well, that's great. I just went over 400 days without a miss, and then I'm taking about a 3-week break, and I have no new ideas to write when I come back. I was just thinking about that on the way home. I said, well, maybe tonight's the night I'll come back to writing, and I got nothing. But I was wondering, did you ever hit up any of the other NPR shows like This American Life or Wait, Don't Tell Me, or any of that, or just Terry Gross?
Well, I ended up not sending the letter, but I did turn it into a column one time. I wrote something about Home Time on PBS, and they sent me an autographed photo. And then several months ago, I was actually in San Diego, and I got to have lunch with Grant Barrett from Away with Words.
Sure.
And I've written, actually, because of that, I've written a couple of language columns in talking about grammar with a fictitious character of mine.
Oh, by the way, I'm speaking with Eric Deckers of the. He's an author of one of my favorite books, which is No Bullshit Social Media with Jason Falls, and he's also written Branding Yourself. As we've just talked about, he is an 18-year blogger and newspaper columnist, and also social media expert. Also, he is the co-owner of Professional Blog Service, which is a really cool pro blogger service that they provide. So, what are you going to read for us today?
Well, I thought I'd read one of my humor columns, and we were talking about language and grammar a little bit, and my fictional character, Carl the Curmudgeon. And so
all right.
I made this guy up. He's kind of an amalgamation of several people I've known, and I've got an image in my head of what he looks like. I still don't know his last name. I've written about Carl for 6 or 7 years now, and still have no idea what his last name is. So I can read Carl the Curmudgeon almost wins the Oxford comma, or hopefully now allowed by AP Stylebook.
Let's do the first one.
Okay. So these are always fictional. They always take place in some bar that is themed by some small country. So this week we were in an Andorran bar. So here it goes. Kid, my friend Carl the curmudgeon burst into Capochi's, waving newspaper in the air. Capochi's is an Andorran bar, and we were going to watch the Roller Hockey World Cup semifinals. Andorra was facing off against Catalonia, and this promised to be an exciting match. Don't give yourself an aneurysm, I said. What's up? Carl slapped a copy of the London Telegraph on the bar. Look, he declared, looking like he had just found the final map to Blackbeard's buried treasure. I picked up the paper and began to read. Owen Paterson has produced a 10-point guide for his civil servants on the pitfalls of common punctuation errors, including the Oxford comma. Son of a bitch! Ha! Shouted Carl. See, I told you the Oxford comma was a load of crap. He gestured at Nicolau, the bartender. 2 Alpha Torados, Nicky. Nicolau paced the 2 Andorran brews in front of us. I took a few big swigs while I considered my next move. I had been ambushed, placed in a very precarious position. Carl and I had tangled over my love of the Oxford comma last year when I soundly thrashed him on his misguided abstinence of the punctuation point. Now Carl was citing the publication of an article in a far-off newspaper about a high-level bureaucrat's hatred of my useful, helpful, and wonderful comma, the one just there after helpful, as some sort of evidence that I was wrong. Inconceivable. I took another long, slow drink and emptied the mug. I plonked it down on the bar. Look, I said, the very fact that this is even an article in the Telegraph should tell you how misguided Paterson is. No one would bat an eye if he had demanded that people stop printing and filing emails. But he's so fundamentally wrong that one of the biggest newspapers in all of England thought it was worth mentioning. And not, I added, not the newspaper with topless women in it. So you know it must be serious. But look, Carl hissed, stabbing the article with a gnarled finger. He created a 10-point guide he's calling punctuation rules. A guide! Yes, but he's a laughingstock to the rest of the government. Look, some even called him the Minister for Semicolons. So, even great ideas often receive violent opposition from mediocre minds. I said, true, and sometimes those minds write punctuation guides. Now you're just being petty. Look, it says right here, Mary Cree, the Shadow Environment Secretary. What's that, like the Secretary of Mordor? I don't know, I said. I don't understand British politics. I continued. Mary Cree accused Mr. Paterson of wasting time with his guide. She said, instead of obsessing over every dot and comma, Owen Paterson should be getting a grip on his department. Yeah, but she's supposed to say that, said Carl. She's the opposition party, and they're supposed to nitpick and whine about everything the party in power does. I flagged down Nicolau, and he set 2 more Alpha Toradas down. I took a drink and checked the score. Andorra 7, Catalonia 6. It was an exciting match. We can barely trust bureaucrats to do the jobs they've been charged with, I said, especially this guy. He's the Minister of the Environment Department, and yet he's a climate change skeptic and is opposed to wind farms. So, now you're going way off topic, said Carl. No, I'm making a point, I said. This guy's actual job is to help protect the environment, but he's skeptical that it needs protecting, and he's opposed to the technology that will help protect it. Yet this is someone whose grammar rules you choose to follow. You're a writer, for God's sake. Why are you taking punctuation advice from a bureaucrat? Because he knows what he's talking about, said Carl. Oh yeah, he's a real model of literary excellence. Most government types are. So it must be that most writers would be good at government. Maybe British novelist Nick Hornby can keep England safe from another mad cow disease outbreak. Kid, I don't think... Or maybe Eddie Izzard, the transvestite comedian, can bring sustainable economic growth to rural England. I can tell when you're losing an argument because you start cracking jokes and oversimplifying the other side's argument, said Carl. No, I'm just saying of all the people to give bureaucrats a lesson on punctuation and grammar, it shouldn't be another bureaucrat. They couldn't write a stop sign without a committee and a mission statement. Carl smirked. I think I won this one. My mind raced. I was desperate. I couldn't lose, not like this. Then I spotted my lifesaver in the article and clutched at it like a drowning man going under for the third time. He also hates dashes, I said, especially the long M dashes, and thinks everyone should just use periods. Why, that addle-minded, know-nothing son of a bitch. Exactly, I said.
I love that. Thanks.
Thank you.
So as I was thinking, I realized I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about social media, only because I have the most hated and despicable Twitter strategy that is out there, but it works for me. And I want to just go ahead and confess and reveal what it is I do, which I've never actually done before. I figure it's time to just come clean. And feel free to thoroughly shame me for this.
Okay.
So I'm coming up on about 50,000 Twitter followers, and with the way that I obtain my followers, this is probably not anything that is novel or new and is thoroughly discouraged. But I go out and I go to blogs which have sizable Twitter followings, and I follow their followers in the hopes that those followers will follow me back. In and of itself, probably not a terrible strategy. But then I do the thing that everybody hates, and I have one automatic direct message that comes back.
Oh, yeah?
But my direct message is not cheesy or lame, or it's just kind of a jokey, kind of like, hey, if you haven't checked out my blog, here's the link. Now, I'm coming up on about 50,000 followers. Everybody hates auto DMs. Everybody hates them. I hate them. I only send one, never send another one. And I have had probably 5 complaints out of the 50,000 or so. Now, people, I'm sure, are mad at me and don't reply back, but I've only gotten about 5 nasty direct messages. And then what I do is I always reply back, hey, I'm really sorry. I'm just trying something new, and please forgive me. And usually they write back and they go, oh, don't worry about it, no problem. So I don't know if other people use that strategy like I do, but I thoroughly am embarrassed to say I do that on a daily basis. I follow at least 500 people and probably get about 30% that follow me back, which gets me to about 150 new followers a day, something like that.
That's pretty good. Yeah, Doug Carr does that. Doug Carr wrote corporate blogging for dummies, and he's here in Indianapolis. And we've had debates about this, and he says, you know what, you can tell me not to do it all you want, but I get traffic from it, so I'm going to keep on doing it. And he doesn't do anything outrageously commercial. It's just like, hey, thanks for stopping by, or thanks for following me, and if you're interested, check out my blog. And so he writes marketing tech blog, marketingtechblog.com, and it's just filled with information. He's not even selling stuff. And so his is one of the I guess, most innocuous. It's the least commercial that I've seen, and it does work for them. So, if you've got 5 out of 50,000, that's pretty good. You couldn't read the phone book to somebody without pissing off more people than that. So, 5 out of 50,000 is pretty good.
It is, and I wish I didn't do it at all. I wish it was just all organic traffic. And I used to be number one on Google. So I used to actually I'm talking about all the scams I do. I used to be so back when Blog World LA was 2 years ago, and you were there. I was there as well, and I was number one during that time. If you typed in the word best blog, I was number one. I was above like Time Magazine. There used to be ways to scam your way up to the top of Google, buying backlinks and things like that. So at the time, I was getting all sorts of crazy traffic from people who would just be searching for best blogs or funny blogs. I was number one for some of these big phrases just because I bought backlinks and other people didn't. And then Google got smart and wised up and released the Penguin and Panda updates and kind of got rid of the guys like me who were doing that. But I didn't really ever care because I'm not selling anything. And, well, I have a book out now, but it's not a big deal. And I just figured if people didn't like what they read, they're not going to come back. And so now I don't have that traffic, and so now I just reach out to people who read stuff like I do, and it seems to work pretty well. And again, my whole philosophy is if they don't like it, they're not going to continue to read my material. So I always think content's king, but I just want to try to get in front of as many eyeballs as possible.
Right.
And
What else should I be doing as far as from a social media perspective? What are the big mistakes that bloggers are making out there?
I think a lot of it is just they're not, and I hate saying this because it's such a 101 level thing, and everybody says it, but they're not writing good stuff.
Sure.
They're not writing for their audience, I guess is the better thing to say. They're writing to impress other people in their job. So, I try to give away more advanced blogging information, but not really to impress other bloggers and other social media people. I'm not going like deep inside baseball, but rather that marketer who blogs already, I want to give them a little more information other than write list posts, write about the things you're passionate about, write good stuff. I don't want to talk about that kind of thing, but I want to talk about here's how you take advantage of Google AuthorRank and here's how you set it up. And I think the biggest mistake that people make is they want to impress their colleagues and not their clients.
That's a really good point. I have a lot of colleagues now in the blogging world, and I write for Aiming Low, which is a collective of funny humor bloggers. And there's a part of me, because I know some of them read my stuff, and there's a part of me that wants to impress them. And then there's another part of me that ignores my core audience when I'm sort of focused on that. And my core audience is really what builds the blog and continues to pass it along to their friends. So I try to keep that in mind. And at the end of the day, one of the things I've started doing is I'm at the level where it's sort of the beginning level of getting noticed, where I start getting a lot of advertisers that want to not so much spend money on my blog, but give away free products and stuff like that. So I don't want to write reviews for products if I don't have to. I just sort of not really my thing. But what I oftentimes suggest is, why don't we give away these products to my readers? We'll do a contest, and I'm shocked at how many of these companies don't want to do that. But that's one little thing I do to try to keep everything more directed towards my audience, not just my content, which is the number one focus, but I've learned that, if I don't want to write about some sunglasses that somebody wants to give me, but if I gave those sunglasses away to a reader, that they would probably really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm actually on my humor blog. I occasionally get those offers. I did get a $20 gift card to Outback to give away to somebody.
Well, I would have kept that one.
Well, I did. They gave me two, and I kept the other one. I haven't given away the other one yet, so we could do a little impromptu contest right here.
Yeah, let's do that. Well, let's say if you'd like to receive one of this $20 Outback gift certificate, all you have to do is leave a comment and tell us why you deserve it, and come up with something funny, and whatever's the funniest, Eric will choose, and there you go.
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about what are the current trends in social media that you're seeing come, in today's sort of changing landscape.
Well, I'm going to say it because it's my job, but content marketing is the big thing right now. And content, I think of content as the written word, but it's really anything that people can consume, whether it's, the written word, it's podcast, it's videos, it's slide decks on SlideShare, anything that people can read, can hear, can watch, and Google can access it. And if Google can access it, and that's what they're paying really close attention to, because like you mentioned with Panda and Penguin, those killed a lot of those black hat SEO tricks. And in fact, I just saw that Google is going to release another Penguin update here in less than a week. So the focus has been on write good stuff and make it interesting and make it shareable, but then also have a big enough network of people who want to share it. And that's ultimately what's going to get you rising higher in Google search results.
Yeah, I have one of the things I've done, I never really understood how to network, but with some of the technology changing, there's so many opportunities to work your sphere of influence. And I use Triber. I don't know if you're familiar, but some people like it, some people hate it. I like it because I'm in good tribes. I also participate in some of the Twitter chats specific to blogging. and I go to the conferences and, that sort of thing. But I have found that networking, now there's link hops, there's all sorts of ways you can get your blog out there that even as of like a year and a half ago, I really didn't know about and didn't seem to be as popular.
Oh, yeah. And it's all about relationships and, supporting your friends, and your friends want to read what you have to say. And so they're going to go read it. They're going to share it. And that's what's ultimately going to spread that. And Google is paying attention to that as well. It's not just a matter of let's pay attention to whether people visit the site from the Google search results, how long did they stay on the page, and did they bounce or did they go around to some other pages. They look at that, but they also look at how many people shared this. Were there a lot of people who read it and then left again, or did a lot of people read it and then they +1'd it, or they tweeted it, or they shared it on Facebook? And they compile all of that, and that's ultimately what Google is paying attention to. It's not as much about links. They still count links, but only valuable links. And it's not as much about keywords. They still count those, but it's more like indexing it like a library would index a book. They don't say, well, this book had a better title and more keywords in it, so we're going to put it at the front of the stack. But rather they say, this is what the book is about. So Google is now looking at social and at quality.
Well, I'm proud to say that while I am no longer number one for best blogs, which I should never have been, I am number one for dick stories, which because my two most popular stories are about my dad's penis, which were really gross but funny, and they've been shared a lot of different ways and times. And so I just did a quick search. I'm number one, and I'm above Philip K. Dick, which of course is a really probably it would be a more appropriate relevant search term for people looking for Philip Dick. They type in Dick stories, they get mine as number one. So I don't know if I'm there I am again. Yeah, I just double checked. I don't know if I'm proud or not, but
my claim to fame, my mom is so proud of this. Out of 72 million search results, I am number 5 for animal fart gene.
Well, we all have to have our mark somewhere.
Yep. And for a while I ranked number 1 for that. I also ranked number 1 for animal methane problem, which I think was my biggest, proudest accomplishment. I actually used to work in the animal production industry. We sold equipment over, just all over the world. And I wrote about how scientists in New Zealand had found the gene in animals that made the fart smelly. And they said, hey, if we could turn this gene off, we could turn off methane in animal farts, which are responsible for about 20% of the total methane problem. And so this was one of my humor columns, and I wrote this column that was more or less, come on, United States, one of the smallest countries in the world solved this before we did. We're the biggest producer of animal methane, and we let little tiny New Zealand beat us to this. Talked about like the animal fart race, and so I ranked number 1 for those two terms for a while, and so I had visions of all these like methane scientists and climate change scientists who were saying, well, how do we solve the animal methane problem? Well, here's a guy who makes fart jokes. So
that's fun. I love to make fart jokes as well, but just in case listeners aren't aware of what we're talking about, the animal methane issue, at least from my understanding, causes massive damage to the ozone layer. Isn't that correct?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's greenhouse gases, and it's a major factor in the total amount of greenhouse gas. One of them is methane, animal methane specifically.
Yeah, I'd heard that all of the fluorocarbons or whatever comes in, the issue with methane, it actually causes more damage than anything that man has created. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd always heard that it was comparable.
Well, and the argument kind of goes that as there are more people eating more meat, we need more animals. More animals make more gas, and therefore we're still contributing to the problem.
Sure. So if you were a beginning blogger, because I have a lot of listeners that are bloggers maybe with less than a couple of years, really trying to get their name out there, what would you recommend they start doing?
Specialize in an area, get as narrow as you can, and make it as laser-focused as possible. So I always tell people, a lot of people start out and say, hey, I want to write a marketing blog. And I say, well, that's great, but, marketing's so big, you'll run out of topics in about 3 weeks. And they say, well, then I'm going to specialize in small business marketing. Well, it's not much better because there's like 300 million or 100 million, I can't remember the number now, companies in this country. So, and of those companies, 96% of them are considered small business. So you're still not narrowing it enough. And so they say, well, I'm going to focus on professional services, doctors, lawyers, dentists, and so, keep on going. Well, I'm going to focus on dentists, and I'm only going to focus on dental marketing for small practices. And now you've got something. Now you can go for days and days and days, forever, with topics. But if you just talk about marketing, you've got nothing to talk about. Once you talk about the basics, you're kind of finished. But focus on that narrow laser niche, and you will have plenty to talk about and never run out of things to talk about.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And for me, since I'm a humor blogger like yourself, like you focus some of yours on fictional. Everything for me is memoir based, but it's all centered around really 3 principles for me, and I'm very clear about what they are. It's being honest, being funny, and vulnerable. So those are my 3 big ones. And I just everything I try to write, I go back to those 3. Am I being honest? Am I saying something that's hard? And am I saying something? Is it funny? And then am I really putting myself out there by being vulnerable? And for me, that's worked really well. And when I try to skew off track from any of those 3 principles, it always backfires. It always just doesn't work as well. Mm-hmm. And my audience knows it.
I always try to focus on making my reader feel smart, regardless of what I write about. So, like, I used to write a lot about stupid lawsuits and people who would file these seemingly frivolous lawsuits because they were injured in a way that was clearly their own fault, but they were hoping for a big payoff. And so I'd write about that, and people would get to feel better about themselves because they weren't the kinds of people who would file those lawsuits. Or this past week, there was a kid in Florida who basically tackled another kid on the school bus when the second kid pointed a gun at another student. And this first kid tackled him with 2 other friends, disarmed the kid, and then got suspended because he was involved in an incident that had a weapon in it.
Wow.
And so I wrote about how stupid are these school administrators who, because of zero tolerance, make this snap decision without actually looking at the facts. And, I write that kind of thing because people get to feel better and feel superior. And that is actually one of the key elements of humor. Even when you do what you do, you're being honest and vulnerable, and people get to read that and go, at least that didn't happen to me, and they feel superior. Or they read about the school administrator and they say, I'd never do something that dumb. I'm smarter. And so, again, there's the humor.
So if you were a brand new blogger and you were trying to figure out where to focus your energy social media-wise, and you wanted to look at, obviously you've got Twitter, you've got Pinterest, you've Facebook, obviously Google+, maybe even Instagram, how would you start building your network?
I prefer more of the serendipity type of marketing and networking, and everything I do, I kind of, the old throw it against the wall and see what sticks. I like to do that and see what happens and kind of let that guide me. And so, if I'm going to be almost strictly word-based, I'm going to stick with the things that I can do words in. So not Pinterest, not Instagram. But if I'm going to be more visually based, then I'm going to look at Pinterest and Instagram and maybe not so much WordPress. And, I'll use Tumblr instead. And I will start just, I'll try out a new tool, see what works, try out another one, and if that doesn't work, so I discard that. But I always tell people when you start out, pick your blog and your blogging platform, because that is the hub of your entire personal brand. Your entire social media presence should be your blog. And then Twitter and either Facebook or LinkedIn, depending on what your focus is. If you're more if you're reaching more people and B2C, business to consumer, and it's more of that personal relationship, then go with Facebook. And if you're a B2B person because you're writing about industry things and you want to reach decision makers at companies, then do LinkedIn. So you got Twitter, LinkedIn, and a blog, or Twitter, Facebook, and a blog, and then add another tool and see if that works. And so if Instagram doesn't really work for you, then you discard it. But you find that maybe being on Quora does work for you, and so you continue to pursue that.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much. I don't want to call it failure, but there's so many things I've tried over the last 2 years, and I've only been blogging for that amount of time, that just doesn't work. And I wasn't afraid to try it, and I was often disappointed. But I just think that a lot of times bloggers don't try enough marketing techniques. They don't realize that while their content is great, they need to get it in front of as many people as possible, and they just need to keep testing tools.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually something will fit within their niche, and you just got to go to the seminars, or go to the webinar, or listen to webinars, watch them, go to the conferences, talk to people who are successful, network. All of those things are so important. But I mean, so many things I've tried have failed. I mean, it's just remarkable.
But you've at least tried those, and you know that they don't work for you. And I think that ultimately is the biggest mistake a lot of people make, is a lot of bloggers, a lot of writers in general, they don't think they are marketers, and they don't realize that I'm a product that has to be sold, and I'm selling content, and people are paying for it with their time. And so I have to convince them to pay me their time so I can continue to produce more content. And so you have to put stuff out there. Nobody is found based on merit. You could be the best writer in the world, but if you don't push it out and let other people know that your writing is out there, they're never going to find you.
You're absolutely right. And that's one of the challenges that bloggers face, at least in my circles, is they'll email me and say, I really like my content, I like what I'm writing, and no one finds it. And I tell them, you have to market it. You have to become an expert in marketing. It's just not enough to have great content. And it's ultimately the most important thing, but if no one's reading it and you want people to read it, then you're in trouble.
There are so many mediocre and even bad writers who have huge audiences because they can market. Like the 50 Shades of Grey book, I hear from people who have read it over and over. It's an awful book. It's not well written. But this woman's worth millions of dollars because she found a lot of readers to buy it and to recommend it, and she just marketed the hell out of this thing. And makes a lot more money than I'll ever see, and I think I'd do a better job. At least, all the words are spelled correctly, and they're in the right place, and I use proper grammar, and we'll never make a fraction of what she makes.
Yeah, well, maybe you need to add some whips and chains.
There you go. More boobies.
That's right. Well, tell us a little bit about your humor blog. It's laughing-stock. And it's STALK.
Yep.
@blogspot.com. So laughing-stock.blogspot.com. And how long has the blog been together?
The blog has been around since 1993. And it wasn't even a blog then. It was a website, and I had to teach myself some basic web design, and I would put up as soon as my column was done and sent off to my editor on Thursday night. Friday morning, I was putting it on my website, and I would basically pull down the page, add my column, format that, and put it back up. And that took an hour. Every time I wanted to put up a new post, that took an hour. And so I'll write about anything and everything I can find. So it's current events like the high school student, or I'll fictionalize something like that article that I referred to in the Carl the Curmudgeon piece. That was a real article, and I found that and thought, hey, this would make a great topic, but I can't just talk about Oxford commas. I have to, add the fictional element. Other times it's something that my family or I have done. or I make up something that we do, like a fake conversation between me and my kids, like a one-sided conversation, like Bob Newhart used to do. You'd hear him on the phone and you'd only hear his side, and I write about that with my family. So it's I've been doing this for over 18 years, and this is something I can't envision not doing anymore. I've done it for so long, I don't know how to not do it.
Yeah, well, you've obviously, it must give you a tremendous amount of satisfaction to continue to do it for so long.
Oh yeah, because I don't get money for it.
I get just a little bit of advertising revenue from mine, but it is a labor of love for sure.
Yeah, Jason calls it cheeseburger money.
that is my vision. I was just asked recently in an interview what my goal was on my blog financially. I said, if I could one day pay the mortgage through my blog, that would be one of the greatest achievements. And they go, well, you don't aim very high, do you? And I said, well, to me, that's really high. I would love to have that happen. I don't know too many people that could even do that. But
Chris Brogan's the only one I know of.
Right. Well, and you know, I love Chris Brogan stuff. I love Jason stuff. Obviously, you're a big part of that. Are you working on any new books these days?
Yeah, I just sent a manuscript off to our editor, Talby Jackson, who owns a company called Radius Communication, and they do what I do. We would almost be competitors, but we work for different size companies. We wrote a book that is tentatively called The Owned Media Doctrine. And so it's all about content marketing at the enterprise level. And we're going to self-publish that one. We couldn't get Pearson to pick it up, so we're going to self-publish that and see what we can do with that. So that should be out in July.
And if you want to pick up Eric's books, probably the one you're most known for is the No BS Social Media book with Jason Falls, also Branding Yourself. And you also co-wrote a Twitter, was it Twitter Marketing for Dummies?
Yeah,
or?
Kyle Lacey, who he was my co-author on Branding Yourself, he wrote Twitter Marketing for Dummies and needed my help on it. I ended up writing about half of it, but by the time I got involved in the project, Wiley had already vetted him and approved the contract, and they said, we can't take a little pen and put your name on there too. So I assisted the writing of the book and didn't actually officially co-author it. So on Branding Yourself, I got to have my name first because when Kyle said, well, why do you get to be first? And I said, because you owe me.
Well, that's really exciting. And then talk about the consulting that you guys do and the other website. The Pro Blogging Service. Okay,
well, and the company's called Professional Blog Service. We're at problogservice.com, and we do content marketing for other companies. Our tagline is we write your blog so you can go to your meetings, and we basically write blog posts and articles just like anybody else would, but they don't have the time to do it. So our goal is to optimize it for search engines, make it shareable, and then even help promote it to their network so the client can get that search engine boost, but also kind of get that credibility boost with their own industries and their own audiences.
And they can find that on, what's the website again?
problogservice.com.
Great. Well, Eric, I really appreciate your time and all the energy. I know you came on as a humor blogger, and I bothered you for 25 minutes all about social media, but I'm sure that my audience found it very, very useful as well as entertaining with your story. And so I just wanted to thank you for being on the show.
Sure, thank you. I had a good time.
And say goodbye, Eric.
Goodbye, Eric.